7-year-old beggar goes to the airport every day. A curious millionaire, seeing her so often, asks, "Why do you always come here?" She replies, "My mum said that one day my dad would come back." When she shows the mark on her arm, he falls. To his knees crying, a story of reunion, forgiveness, and hidden truths that will change their lives forever in ways no one could imagine. Get ready, because this heartwarming story will touch your heart. Subscribe to our channel, like this video, and tell us where you're watching from. The international airport bustled with the characteristic energy of a normal day. Hundreds of travelers hurried with their luggage, some rushing to catch their flights, others waiting patiently in the lounges. Amidst all the organized chaos, a small figure stood out from the environment. Lily always sat in the same place near the international arrivals gates. Her small feet, clad in worn-out sneakers, dangled without reaching the floor as she attentively watched every face that appeared. Her dress, although clean, showed clear signs of having been mended many times. Her dark hair, gathered in a simple braid, framed a face with delicate features and dark eyes that seemed to hold all the determination in the world. The airport staff already knew her. Some smiled at her with compassion, others occasionally offered her a sandwich or a bottle of water. Lily always thanked them with a shy smile, but never left her post until evening fell. Thomas Hayes arrived at the airport that day earlier than usual. His flight to New York had been moved up, and as always, he preferred to wait in the comfort of the VIP lounge. He wore an impeccable suit that highlighted his athletic figure, while his dark hair with a few grey strands at the temples gave him a distinguished air that perfectly matched his position as one of the country's most influential businessmen. As he passed through the arrivals area, something caught his attention. It was the third time this week that he had seen the same girl sitting on that bench, always alone, always watching. Curiosity got the better of his usual indifference. "Good morning," Thomas said, approaching with a warm smile. "Are you waiting for someone?" Lily looked at him with some distrust. Her large dark eyes studied him for a few seconds before answering, "Yes, sir, I'm waiting for my dad." The little girl's voice had a softness that contrasted with the firmness of her gaze. Thomas sat down next to her, placing his elegant briefcase on the floor. "Do you know what time his flight arrives?" Lily shook her head. "Mom told me that one day Dad would come back on a very big airplane. That's why I come every day." Something in the innocence of that answer pierced Thomas's heart. He looked at the girl more closely. Her worn clothes, her small hands holding an old backpack, and that sparkle of hope in her eyes that seemed unshakable. "And you come here alone?" "I live nearby," she replied, pointing vaguely towards the exit. "With my grandma Carol. She sells flowers on the corner of the airport." Thomas nodded, recognizing the elderly woman who indeed sold small bouquets near the main entrance. He had seen her many times without paying real attention. "What's your name?" he asked, feeling a strange connection to the little girl. "Lily," she replied, flashing a small smile. "And you?" "Thomas," he replied, extending his hand as if she were an adult, a gesture that made the girl smile more widely. At that moment, a voice announced over the loudspeakers that boarding had begun for Thomas's flight. He looked at his luxury watch and stood up. "I have to go, Lily. My plane is about to leave." Something in the girl's eyes, a shadow of disappointment, stopped him. "Are you going far away too?" she asked, and her voice seemed to contain all the weight of the world. "Just for a few days," Thomas replied, feeling an inexplicable need to comfort her. "But I'll be back." "My dad also said he'd be back," Lily whispered, more to herself than to him. Thomas felt a tightness in his chest. He took a card from his pocket and handed it to her. "When I get back, I'd like to talk to you more. If you need anything in the meantime, you can ask someone to call this number." Lily nodded solemnly, putting the card in her backpack with the care that only children show for what they consider treasures. Throughout the flight to New York, Thomas couldn't get that little girl out of his mind. There was something about her in her gaze that felt unsettlingly familiar. Besides, her story had struck a chord in him. Thomas hadn't allowed himself to think about his past, about the life he had left behind to become the successful businessman he was now, for a long time. 3 days later, upon returning to the airport, the first thing he did was look for her. Lily was there in the same place, as if she hadn't moved. This time Thomas approached with a small package. "Hi, Lily. I brought you something from New York." The girl's eyes lit up, but then she looked towards the international arrivals gate with anxiety. "I haven't seen my dad yet. Do you know anything else about him? What's his name? Maybe I could help you look for him," Thomas offered, sitting down next to her again. Lily opened the package carefully. It was a small doll with a blue dress. The girl held it with reverence. "It's very pretty, thank you, Mr. Thomas," she said, hugging the toy. Then, answering his question, she added, "My dad's name is Robert. Mum used to say he was the most handsome man in the world and that I have his same eyes." Thomas observed Lily's eyes, large and expressive, a dark brown, almost black tone, framed by long eyelashes. He felt a strange chill. "And your mum? Does she come with you too?" A shadow of sadness crossed the little girl's face. "Mum is in heaven. Grandma Carol says she watches over us from there." Thomas's heart sank. The story of this girl was becoming more and more painful. "I'm so sorry, Lily." "It's okay," she said, with a maturity uncharacteristic of her age. "Grandma says I'm strong like Mum. Her name was Isabel. She was very beautiful." The name caused an internal jolt in Thomas. Isabel. A common name, he told himself, trying to ignore the strange feeling that was growing inside him. "Did your mom tell you things about your dad?" "Yes," Lily nodded, perking up. "She told me he traveled a lot, that he knew incredible places. She said that one day he would come back to take us with him, but then she got very sick." Her voice faded, and Thomas felt the urge to hug her, but he held back. Instead, he asked her, "Do you have any picture of him?" Lily shook her head. "Grandma says the pictures got lost when we moved, but I have this." The girl rolled up the right sleeve of her dress to show a small birthmark on her forearm. It was a spot with a peculiar shape, almost like a crescent moon. "Mom said it's the same as the one Dad has, that when I see him, I'll know it's him because we have the same mark." Thomas froze, staring at the mark. The world seemed to stop around him as a flood of memories invaded his mind. The same mark, exactly in the same place, that he carried on his own arm. With trembling hands, Thomas rolled up the sleeve of his shirt, revealing an identical mark. Lily's eyes widened, going from the mark to Thomas's eyes repeatedly. Are you my dad?" she whispered, with a mixture of disbelief and hope so pure that it hurt. Thomas couldn't speak. A lump in his throat prevented him from making any sound. He could barely nod before falling to his knees in front of her, tears running freely down his face as reality hit him with the force of a hurricane. Isabel. Now he remembered everything. The beautiful young woman with whom he had had a passionate relationship before accepting a business opportunity overseas. He had left her promising to return, but then his career took off and the excuses for not returning multiplied. Over time, convinced that she would have moved on, he decided not to look for her. He never knew she was pregnant. He never knew he had a daughter. He never knew that Isabel had died. "I'm so sorry," he murmured finally, his voice broken by emotion. I didn't know you existed." Lily, with a wisdom that transcended her short age, extended her small arms and wrapped them around Thomas's neck in a hug that contained all the forgiveness in the world. "It's okay, Dad. Mom always said you'd come back, and she was right." Amidst the bustle of the airport, surrounded by strangers passing by in a hurry, father and daughter merged into a hug that erased years of absence. Thomas's tears wet Lily's shoulder, while the girl smiled against his neck, finally home. What neither of them knew was that this reunion, as miraculous as it was painful, would be just the beginning of a much more complex story, full of secrets that Isabel had taken to the grave and that would soon begin to come to light. Carol, Lily's grandmother, watched the scene from a distance with an indecipherable expression on her wrinkled face. In her wrinkled hand, she clutched a yellowed letter that Isabel had written before dying, a letter that contained truths that would change Thomas's and Lily's lives forever. The reunion between father and daughter, as emotional as it was unexpected, was only the first chapter of a story that had begun long before, when an ambitious young man chose his career over love, without knowing the consequences that decision would have. The small apartment where Lily and Carol lived was located in a modest neighborhood near the airport. The walls, although faded, were decorated with children's drawings and some framed photographs. It was a humble but clean home, permeated by the aroma of the flowers that Carol sold. Thomas felt out of place in his expensive suit and Italian shoes. He was still shocked by the discovery that he had a daughter, a reality that had completely altered his world in a matter of minutes. "Sit down, sir," Carol said, pointing to a wooden chair next to the kitchen table. Her voice was firm but tired, as if she carried the weight of many secrets. "I think we have a lot to talk about." Lily watched them from the small living room, hugging the doll that Thomas had given her. Her big eyes went from one to the other, as if she were trying to solve a complicated puzzle. "Lily, honey," Carol said softly, "why don't you go to your room and play for a while? I need to talk to Mr. Thomas." The girl nodded, although it was evident that she would prefer to stay. Before leaving, she looked at Thomas and asked, "Are you going to stay, Dad?" The word Dad resonated in Thomas's heart like a deep echo that awakened emotions he didn't even know he possessed. "I'm not going anywhere," he promised, and for the first time in years, he was saying something completely sincere. Once Lily disappeared into her room, Carol took a worn metal box from a drawer. She opened it and extracted several photographs and a carefully folded letter. Isabel kept these things as her greatest treasure, she explained, handing Thomas a photograph. In it, a young Isabel smiled radiantly next to a younger Thomas. They were on a beach, with the sunset as a backdrop. Thomas remembered that day perfectly. It had been their first getaway together, just a few weeks after meeting. "She never stopped loving you," Carol continued, her voice a little harsher. "Even when months went by without hearing from you, she kept defending you, saying you would come back when you knew about Lily." Guilt hit Thomas like a punch to the stomach. "I never knew about Lily," he murmured, although he knew that didn't absolve him. "When I left, Isabel and I agreed that it was better to end things. My career was taking off. I was going to be traveling constantly." "Excuses," Carol interrupted, although without real hostility. "Isabel found out she was pregnant 3 weeks after you left. She called you many times, but you never answered. She wrote letters that were returned." Thomas closed his eyes, remembering how he had changed his number and address shortly after settling overseas, convinced that it was better to cut all ties with his past to focus on his future. He had been young, ambitious, and selfish. "When Lily was born, Isabel was alone. I came to live with them to help her," Carol continued. "Isabel worked as a nurse, double shifts sometimes, all to give Lily a good life." Thomas listened to each word as if it were a knife twisting inside him. The image of Isabel, alone and struggling for her daughter, was too painful to contemplate. How did she die?" he asked finally, fearing the answer. Carol sighed, deeply, as if gathering strength to talk about something that still caused her unbearable pain. "Leukemia. She was diagnosed when Lily was 5 years old. She fought with all her strength, but the treatment didn't work." Thomas felt the tears threatening to return. The idea that Isabel had faced something so terrible without him knowing, without him being able to help her, was devastating. "Before she died, she wrote this," Carol said, handing him the folded letter, "for you in case you ever showed up." With trembling hands, Thomas unfolded the paper. Isabel's handwriting, elegant and clear, seemed to bring her voice back from beyond. "Dear Thomas, if you're reading this, it means you finally met our daughter. Part of me always knew this day would come, even if I wasn't here to see it. I'm not writing to make you feel guilty. The decisions we made led us down different paths, and I've made peace with that. My only regret is not telling you about Lily with enough insistence. Maybe I should have been more persistent. Maybe I should have come to find you. But I was also hurt and proud. Our daughter is the most beautiful thing I've created in this life. She has your intelligence, your intensity, and of course your eyes and that peculiar mark that I always considered magical. I've told her about you, always with love. To her, you're a hero who will one day return. There's no easy way to say the following." And maybe it's selfish of me to reveal it now that I'm gone, but there's something else you should know. The letter continued, but the last lines were blurred as if tears had fallen on them, diluting the ink. The words were illegible. What else did it say? Thomas asked, his heart racing. Carol shook her head. I don't know. Isabel closed the letter before I could read it completely. She said it was something between you two. Thomas looked at the letter again, trying to decipher the faded words, without success. What else had Isabel wanted to tell him? What secret had she taken to the grave? Mr. Thomas, Carol said, interrupting his thoughts, I don't know what your plans are now, but Lily has waited for you her whole life. If you're not willing to be a part of her life completely, I ask you to leave now and don't come back. That girl has suffered enough loss already. The harshness in Carol's voice was understandable. She was protecting her granddaughter from another possible abandonment. I'm not going to abandon her, Thomas replied firmly. I know I can't make up for the lost years, but I want to be a part of her life. I want to know her, take care of her, give her everything she deserves. Carol studied him with eyes that had seen too much suffering to trust easily. Nice words, she said finally. I hope your actions back them up. At that moment, Lily came out of her room as if she had been waiting for the right moment to reappear. In her hands she carried a small photo album. Grandma, can I show Dad my pictures? Carol smiled, a tired but genuine smile, and nodded. Lily approached Thomas and put the album in his hands. It was decorated with stickers and children's drawings, and on the cover it said Lily and Isabel in uneven letters. As they flipped through the album together, Thomas got to know his daughter through those images. Her first day of school, birthdays, days in the park, moments with Isabel. In each photo, the resemblance between mother and daughter was remarkable, but he could also see his own features in Lily. Mom always said you looked a lot like me, commented the girl, pointing to a photo where she was blowing out the candles on a cake. She said you were smart and brave. Those words were like a stab for Thomas. Isabel had portrayed him as someone much better than he really had been. Your mum was the brave one, he replied, his voice breaking. As they continued to look at the photos, Thomas noticed one in particular that caught his attention. In it, Isabel held in her hands what appeared to be a small teddy bear with a blue jacket. What's that your mom is holding? He asked, pointing to the object. Lily looked at the photo with nostalgia. That's Bluey. It was my favorite bear, but it got lost when we moved. Mom kept it in a special box with other things. Something in the description of the bear triggered a memory in Thomas. He had given that bear to Isabel the day they said goodbye at the airport. Why was it so important now? There was something more, something he couldn't quite remember. Do you know where that box is now? He asked, trying to maintain a casual tone. Lily shook her head, but Carol intervened. I think I know what box you're talking about. Isabel kept some things in a trunk that we left in storage when we moved. Here, the apartment was too small. Could we go see that trunk? Thomas asked, with the feeling that something important was waiting to be discovered. Carol looked at him suspiciously. It's in a storage facility on the other side of town. We haven't been able to pay the rent in months. They've probably auctioned off the stuff already. Thomas stood up, determined. Let's find out. I'll take care of any outstanding payments. Thomas, Carol, and Lily arrived at the storage facility as the sun began to set. The place was a grey and impersonal building with endless rows of identical storage units. Thomas paid the considerable accumulated debt without flinching, and the manager, visibly surprised, handed them the key to the unit. You're lucky, he commented. It was scheduled for auction next week. The storage unit was small and filled with boxes, furniture covered with sheets, and memories of a life that no longer existed. Carol and Lily began to search through the belongings, while Thomas watched with a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. Here it is, exclaimed Lily after a while, pointing to a dark wooden trunk in a corner. The trunk was locked with an antique padlock. Thomas looked at Carol, who shook her head. Isabel had the key. She always wore it on a chain around her neck. Thomas then remembered that Isabel used to wear a small key hanging on a silver chain. He had never paid attention to what that key opened. Was it buried with her? He asked, feeling a strange urgency to open the trunk. Carol nodded sadly, but then Lily reached into the neck of her dress and pulled out a chain. "Mum gave it to me before she left," she said simply. "She told me to keep it until the time was right." Carol seemed as surprised as Thomas. "You never told me you had that key, Lily." "Mom made me promise that I would only use it when Dad was with us," the girl replied, with a solemnity uncharacteristic of her age. Thomas felt a chill run down his spine. How had Isabel known that he would appear one day? And what was so important? In that trunk that required his presence to be opened. With trembling hands, Lily inserted the small key into the padlock. It opened with a click that sounded strangely definitive in the silence of the storage facility. The three of them knelt in front of the trunk as Lily lifted the lid. Inside were several smaller boxes, photo albums, and documents organized carefully. On top of everything, there was an envelope with Thomas's name written in Isabel's unmistakable handwriting. "It's for you, Dad," Lily said, handing it to him. Thomas opened the envelope carefully. Inside was another letter and what appeared to be a flash drive. "Dear Thomas, if you're reading this, it means you've come back into our lives, just as I always knew you would. There's something I never had the courage to tell you, something that changed my life but that I decided to face alone. When I found out I was pregnant, I also discovered something else. I had a genetic condition, something that doctors said would likely be passed on to our daughter. The leukemia that eventually took me was related to this condition. Our Lily might develop the same illness at some point. She needs to be under constant medical supervision, something I could never fully provide due to our financial limitations. On the flash drive, you'll find all the medical records, both mine and Lily's. You'll also find the contact information for Dr. Ignacio Mendez, the specialist who treated me. He knows our case and can help Lily. I'm not telling you this to scare you or to make you feel responsible. I'm telling you because now that you've come back into her life, you have the power to protect her as I never could. Please take care of our daughter. Give her the life she deserves, full of love and opportunities. Always yours, Isabel." Tears ran freely down Thomas's face as he read the letter. Fear, guilt, and determination mixed inside him. He looked at Lily, who was watching him with those eyes so similar to his own, unaware of the fate that possibly awaited her. Then he looked at Carol, whose eyes were also full of tears. "Did you know?" Thomas asked. Carol shook her head. "Isabel never told me that the disease could be hereditary. She just said it was bad luck." Thomas clenched the letter in his hand, feeling the weight of the world fall on his shoulders. But this time he wouldn't run from his responsibility. This time he would face the challenge with the same courage that Isabel had shown. "We're going to get through this together," he said, extending one arm towards Lily and the other towards Carol. "I'll do everything in my power to protect her." As he hugged his daughter and the woman who had been her mother when he was absent, Thomas made a silent promise to Isabel. He wouldn't fail this time. He would take care of Lily as Isabel would have wanted. What none of them knew at that moment was that the trunk contained even more secrets. Among the carefully stored documents and memories, there was evidence of an even more surprising truth, a truth that would forever change Thomas's perception of his past with Isabel and the future that awaited him with Lily. Dr. Ignacio Mendez's office was located in one of the best clinics in the city. It was a bright space with walls decorated with academic titles and awards that attested to his prestige as one of the most respected hematologists in the country. Thomas, Lily, and Carol waited in silence. 2 weeks had passed since the discovery of Isabel's trunk. 2 weeks in which Thomas had used all his influence to get the best possible medical care for his daughter. "The doctor will be with you in a moment," announced the nurse, smiling kindly at Lily. "The doctor?" Thomas asked, confused. "I thought we were seeing Dr. Mendez." "Dr. Mendez retired 3 years ago," the nurse explained. "Dr. Montiel is now taking care of his patients." Before Thomas could ask more questions, the door opened and a woman entered. Tall, with dark hair pulled back in an elegant bun and intelligent eyes behind modern glasses, Dr. Montiel radiated competence and warmth in equal measure. "Good morning, I'm Dr. Lucia Montiel," she introduced herself, extending her hand. As he shook it, Thomas felt a strange familiarity, as if he already knew her. The doctor sat down in front of them and opened a folder containing the results of the exhaustive tests that Lily had undergone in recent days. "I have carefully studied the case," Lucia began, "including Isabel's medical history that you provided. I have also reviewed Lily's new tests." Thomas held his breath, preparing for the worst. Beside him, Carol squeezed Lily's hand, who was watching everything with quiet curiosity. "I have good news," the doctor continued with a warm smile. "Lily shows no signs of the genetic condition that affected her mother." A collective sigh of relief filled the room. Thomas felt an enormous weight lift from his shoulders. "Are you sure?" he asked, needing to confirm what he had just heard. "Completely," Lucia nodded. "We have performed specific genetic tests. Lily did not inherit Isabel's genetic mutation." "But Isabel's letter said," Thomas began, confused. "Isabel was working with limited information," Lucia explained. "When she was diagnosed with the disease, genetic technology was not as advanced as it is now. The doctors told her that there was a high risk of transmission, but they couldn't confirm it with certainty." Thomas assimilated this information, feeling a mixture of relief and sadness. Isabel had lived with that fear, convinced that her daughter might face the same cruel fate. "However," the doctor continued, "I recommend regular checkups for Lily, as a preventative measure. It's standard practice for family members of people who have suffered from this type of disease." "Of course," Thomas nodded. "We'll do everything necessary." As the doctor explained the follow-up plan, Thomas couldn't help but observe her carefully. There was something about her in her way of speaking, in her gestures, that felt strangely familiar. At the end of the consultation, when Carol and Lily left the room first, Thomas paused for a moment. "Excuse me, Dr. Montiel, but I have the strange feeling that we know each other from somewhere." Lucia smiled, an enigmatic smile that seemed to confirm Thomas's suspicions. "We met briefly a long time ago," she replied. "I was a medical student when Isabel began her treatment. I attended to her during a few sessions." Thomas nodded, although he felt that there was something more that the doctor wasn't saying. "Isabel spoke a lot about you," Lucia added. "She always believed you would come back one day." Before Thomas could respond, Lily poked her head through the door. "Dad, are you coming? Grandma says we can go for ice cream to celebrate." "Of course, Princess," Thomas smiled. "I'll be right there." He said goodbye to the doctor with the strange feeling that this wouldn't be the last time they saw each other. That night, after putting Lily to bed in her new room in the penthouse that Thomas had bought for the three of them, he returned to Isabel's trunk. Although they had already reviewed most of its contents, something told him that there were still secrets to be discovered. At the bottom of the trunk, beneath photo albums and documents, he found a small metal box that they had overlooked in their initial review. Inside was an additional flash drive and a small diary with Isabel's handwriting. He connected the flash drive to his laptop and found a folder with videos. The first, dated shortly after Thomas's departure, showed Isabel sitting in what appeared to be her old apartment. "Hello, Thomas," Isabel began in the video, her young and beautiful face lit by a sad smile. "I know you'll probably never see this, but I need to talk to you as if you were here." Thomas felt a lump in his throat as he watched Isabel caress her still flat stomach. "I'm pregnant," she continued. "We're going to have a baby. I tried to contact you, but I think you've changed your number and address. Part of me wants to go look for you, but I respect your decision to move on. I know how much that opportunity meant to you." The video ended with Isabel promising to make more recordings to document the baby's growth, in case you ever want to know what you missed. There were more videos. Isabel showing her increasingly larger stomach, sonograms, the room she was preparing for the baby. Thomas watched them all, silent tears running down his face, a late witness to moments he should never have missed. The foie. Last video, recorded when Lily was already 4 years old, showed Isabel noticeably thinner, her face marked by fatigue, but with the same determined smile. "Thomas, if you're seeing this, it means you've come back into our lives, as I always knew you would," she said. "There's something I never told you, something important." Isabel paused, as if gathering strength. "I have a twin sister, Lucia. We were separated at birth, during a very difficult time for our mother. I grew up with our grandmother while Lucia was adopted by a wealthy family. We met again by chance in college, her studying medicine, me nursing. Thomas felt the world. Stop. A twin sister? Suddenly he understood why Dr. Montiel had seemed so familiar. Lucia specializes in the same disease that now affects me, Isabel continued. Ironic, right? I've asked her to take care of Lily if something happens to me, to monitor her health. I know she will, even though our relationship has been complicated. Isabel looked directly at the camera, as if she could see Thomas through time. If you're seeing this, look for her. She knows our whole story and can help you take care of Lily better than anyone. The video ended with a close-up of Isabel, her eyes filled with a mixture of sadness and hope. I loved you until the end, Thomas, and I always knew you'd come back. The screen went black and Thomas remained motionless, processing the revelation. Lucia, the doctor they had just seen, was Lily's aunt, Isabel's twin sister. Why hadn't she told him? He opened the diary and began to read, discovering more details about the complex relationship between the twins. Isabel wrote about initial tensions, jealousy, reconciliations, but above all, she wrote about Lucia's promise to take care of Lily, if something happened to her. Lucia still hasn't completely forgiven me for staying with Thomas, said one particularly revealing entry. But I know she loves Lily unconditionally and will do anything to protect her. Thomas closed the diary, stunned by the revelation. He had been between the sisters. Had Lucia also loved him? Memories began to flow. A college party, two identical girls, mixed conversations, confusions. Everything was beginning to make sense. The next morning, Thomas returned to the clinic, this time alone. He needed to talk to Lucia, to fully understand the past they shared. I knew you'd come back, she said when she saw him enter her office. She didn't seem surprised. I know everything, Thomas said bluntly. I saw Isabel's videos. I read her diary. I know you're her twin sister. Lucia nodded, taking off her glasses with a tired gesture. I should have told you yesterday, but I didn't know how. Why didn't you come forward before? You've been taking care of Lily all this time, haven't you? From afar, Lucia admitted. Carol doesn't know who I am. Isabel preferred to keep our relationship private after everything that happened. Are you referring to what happened between us? Thomas asked, now clearly remembering how he had met both sisters in college, how at first he had dated Lucia, and how later, without realizing they were two different people, he had ended up falling in love with Isabel. I loved you, Lucia said simply, without resentment. But you chose her, even if you didn't realize you were choosing. I'm sorry, Thomas murmured, feeling the weight of a past he was only beginning to fully understand. Don't be, Lucia smiled. Isabel and I made peace a long time ago. She was my sister, and although it was difficult at first, I understood that you can't control who you love. And now, Thomas asked, what is your role in Lily's life? I'm her doctor, Lucia replied, and if you allow me, I'd like to be. The aunt she's never known. Thomas nodded, feeling that a circle was beginning to close. There's something else you should know, Lucia added, taking a folder from her desk. Isabel left this for you. Inside the folder were legal documents, a will, life insurance papers, and deeds to a small property outside the city. Isabel knew you would come back one day, Lucia explained. She made sure to leave everything in order for when that happened. The house belonged to our grandmother, where Isabel grew up. She wanted Lily to have it someday, to know her roots. Thomas looked at the documents, moved by Isabel's foresight, by her unwavering faith that he would return to take care of their daughter. Isabel never stopped believing in you, Lucia continued. Even when I lost hope, she kept hers. He'll come back, she always said. Maybe not for me, but he'll come back for our daughter. 3 months later, Thomas's life had completely changed. He had reorganized his business to spend more time in the city, close to Lily. Carol and the girl had moved into the restored house that had belonged to Isabel's grandmother, a bright place surrounded by a beautiful garden where Lily could play freely. Lucia had become a constant presence in their lives, the aunt that Lily never knew she had, but whom she had accepted with the same naturalness with which she accepted all the changes in her life. It was a Sunday afternoon, and the house was full of laughter. Carol was baking cookies in the kitchen, while Lily and Lucia played in the garden. Thomas watched them from the terrace, marveling at how life could change so drastically in such a short time. "Dad, come play with us," called Lily, her face lit by a smile that each day looked more and more like Isabel's. Thomas joined them, feeling a deep gratitude for this second chance that life had given him. That night, after putting Lily to bed, Thomas sat on the porch with Lucia and Carol, sharing stories about Isabel, remembering her with love and admiration. "She would have been very happy to see us all together," Carol said with a nostalgic smile. "She is," Lucia replied, looking up at the stars. "I'm sure she is." When Carol retired to rest, Thomas and Lucia remained in silence, contemplating the night. "Do you know why Lily went to the airport every day?" Lucia asked finally. Thomas shook his head. It was something he had always wanted to ask, but he had never found the right moment. "Isabel told her that she met you at an airport," Lucia explained. "It wasn't true, of course, you met us at college, but Isabel thought it was more romantic, I guess. She told her that if she ever looked for you, she should start there." Thomas smiled, touched by Isabel's romantic detail. "And it worked," he murmured. "Somehow it worked." "Isabel always had a special way of making things happen," Lucia nodded, "even after she was gone." At that moment, as if she had been invoked by their words, a gentle breeze stirred the leaves of the trees, bringing with it the faint scent of the flowers in the garden. Thomas closed his eyes, thinking about all the twists and turns his life had taken since that day at the airport. He had lost so much through his ambition and selfishness, but he had also gained an incalculable gift, the opportunity to know and love his daughter, to redeem himself, to complete the circle that had begun so long ago. Isabel's promise had been fulfilled. Thomas had returned, not to her but to Lily, and in that return he had found something he didn't even know he was looking for, the peace of knowing that, despite his mistakes, he had always been loved and waited for. That night, as the house slept in silence, Thomas took out the old photo of him and Isabel on the beach. He looked at it for a long time, silently thanking the woman who had never stopped believing in him, even when he himself had forgotten who he really was. "You were right, Isabel," he whispered to the photograph. "I'm back, and I'm never leaving again." The next day, Lily found her father asleep on the couch, with the photo of Isabel in his hands. The girl looked at him curiously, then took a blanket and covered him carefully, as she had seen her grandmother do so many times. "Good morning, Mom," Lily whispered, gently touching Isabel's face in the photograph. "You were right. Dad came back just like you said he would." Outside, the sun began to rise, bathing the house with a golden light that promised a new day, full of possibilities. At the airport, a new day was also beginning. Hurried travelers came and went, oblivious to the story of love, loss, and redemption that had begun there. With a little girl waiting patiently day after day, life went on. But now for Lily, Thomas, Carol, and Lucia, it did so with renewed purpose, with the certainty that even the most painful separations could give way to miraculous reunions, and that love, when it is true, always finds its way back home. And so, in the house surrounded by flowers where Isabel once played as a child, a new family emerged, united by ties of blood, but also by something equally powerful, the fulfilled promise of a long-awaited return, the unwavering faith of a mother who knew that one day her little girl would find her father at the airport.